Instead, we have the opportunity to make a habit of empathy, to recognize ourselves in each other.
My name's Jeremy Nickel. I'm the minister of Mission Peak Unitarian Universalist Congregation in Fremont, California. And what is empathy? That's such a great question. I think it's probably the missing ingredient in too many of our human relations when they break down these days. I think empathy is kind of looking at someone else in the eye and not necessarily seeing yourself, but seeing another individual, someone who has their own thoughts, their own truth, and really being okay with that, not being threatened by it, but really feeling, wow, there's someone else on the end of those eyes that I need to understand, not as an extension of myself, not as someone like me, but as someone completely separate from me with value. So I think empathy is something we really need to do some work on.
What about building a culture of empathy? Any ideas what we can do to actually create more empathy within our society?
God, that's $1 million question, right? I mean, we talk a lot about sharing in kindergarten, and I don't know that we do a lot of lesson planning around things like that anymore. You know, we've cut our school budgets to such a degree, I don't know that we can really train people properly to be the humans we hope they are. So I would think, you know, it's just another part of our education system that really needs more time and effort and energy put into it. It's at least where it's got to begin. Obviously the home, you know, families, strong families, and really having a family teaches you empathy more than anything, because these are the people you're stuck with whether you like it or not, and you can really be forced to learn to see other humanity through that, I think.
And as we continue, there's no better person to tell us about the community and what we can do than Reverend Jeremy Nickel, who is coming from the Mission Peak, a Unitarian Universalist congregation in Fremont, and he's here to share his words with you tonight.
Thank you. I'm humbled by that introduction. First of all, I want to join with my fellow colleagues in sending blessings and prayers from my congregation to all the families in Tucson affected directly by this tragedy. And also, of course, to all the members of Congress and their families who I'm sure are undoubtedly feeling less safe today than they did last week. I hope they know that they really feel the fact that their country is mourning with them, that we truly feel their loss with them. They are not alone. And they know that we are aware that we as a country, as a people, must make real changes in the wake of what we have allowed to happen to their families. There has been a lot of finger pointing since this tragedy, and it is tempting to point blame at those that have turned our rhetoric into political poison, those that have turned the cauldron of our political discourse to a racing boil. It is tempting to name these people, to blog about them, to rail against them in witty talk show clip format. We are certainly good at that as a people at this point, and I'm sure there's some value in it. But the reminder I bring you today is that this is not a problem that they have brought to us. As convenient as that idea feels to embrace, this is our problem. And as long as we see it as someone else's, it will simply never be solved. Every single one of us has participated in the mass hysteria we have created. America is not healthy. Our ability to communicate with each other across lines of difference is completely broken. And the fix, the change that we need to make, is much less about the slogans, tactics, or Facebook postings of any one person on any one side of the political spectrum. It is about us each looking at ourselves, at our behavior, and thinking long and hard about what we need to do to change. Please think, if you will, about the last 5 political conversations you had with someone. Listen to each other so that we hear, really hear, rather than just looking for the weakness in the argument so that we can make our opponent look bad. We must once again have real conversations. We might not be ready to have our minds changed yet, but we must at least have conversations where we can be open to considering that the other person's opinion is a valid one. One that, although we may disagree with, deserves an equal space to be expressed. It is not automatically stupid just because it is different than yours. And it will not automatically lead us to the end of the world. And what might surprise you when you begin to approach conversation this way is you will discover that there is actually more that unites us than divides us. We are really not so different after all. May we continue to unfold this truth together. May it be so. Ashe.